Hi, my name is Marissa Winters, and I am a registered dietitian nutritionist. Thank you so much for joining us today at this session, Eating for Self-Care. This is the Center for Conscious Caregiving's first virtual summit, and we're really excited about sharing our practices and philosophy with you. So welcome. As I mentioned, I am a registered dietitian nutritionist, and I do a lot of work with the Center for Conscious Caregiving. We tend to think of self-care as something that requires a lot of effort or perhaps requires a lot of time. But in actuality, self-care are those things that we do throughout the day. And when we can start to incorporate practices throughout our day, throughout our life, even the little things, they become opportunities for improving our lives, right? And so that's kind of what the intention is behind this presentation. It's those things that you do every day to nourish yourself that over time make a difference. And so the intention behind this is to become aware of some of the different reasons why we eat and to give some tools so that eating becomes a little more thoughtful, a little more mindful, and a little more nourishing. Okay. So a few definitions. Hunger is a physiological drive to eat, right? When we're hungry, we have physical symptoms. Stomachs growl, you may have a headache, it may be a little difficult to focus. Some people can actually feel a little bit shaky, right? But there are physical symptoms. It's a physiological drive. Appetite is a psychological desire to eat, and it can come with physical symptoms. I mean, we've all had the experience of getting up from a meal and smelling a dessert, and all of a sudden, you have room for something more, right? So appetite can come with some physical symptoms. However, it in general and in and of itself is not physically driven. It's psychologically driven. And one way to discern the difference is to consider if there's a specific food that you want. Because with hunger, pretty much anything is going to do. With appetite, it is typically a specific food or a specific taste that you're trying to, that's attractive or that's appealing, right? So one isn't necessarily better than the other, but they are two different motivators. Mark Hyman is the founder. He's a physician, and he's the founder of, he's considered to be like the father of functional medicine, which takes a very holistic approach. And I absolutely love this quote because food is not just calories, it is information, right? And the choices that you make about what to eat and how to eat make an enormous difference in your health as well as the environment. And there are numerous studies that back this up. So your fork is a power tool. SAD in nutrition circles is an acronym for the Standard American Diet. And it is kind of sad when you look at these numbers, right? And so this is kind of like how the majority of us eat, right? 90% of us don't get enough vegetables. 2/3 of us don't eat enough fruit. And this is in the course of any given day. What we do consume is too much sugar, too much salt, and too many refined grains, things like pretzels, things like white flour, right? White rice, versus say whole grains, which have fiber and extra additional nutrients in them. Okay. 20% of our meals are eaten in the car. I can tell you there is nothing good that you're going to be eating in the car except for maybe a piece of fruit. But the problem with that is that eating while driving is just as dangerous as texting while driving. It's distracted driving. We eat 1/3 more packaged food than fresh food. Okay, so what that means is that, and there's another slide which I haven't included in this presentation, but what that means is that we are eating more processed food than whole food, than fresh food. Okay. And more than half of Americans surveyed, and this was, I believe, in 2017, 52% of the Americans surveyed by this, I think it was Gallup, said that doing their taxes was easier than figuring out how they should eat, what they should eat for their health, right? And I hear that all the time in my practice. I don't know what to eat. I don't know what to eat. And there is an overwhelming amount of information out there. Much of it is marketing. So much of it is coming from organizations that have an agenda, a distinct desire to get you to eat more of their product. But the information that is consistent and the studies that show benefit time after time after time, it's not controversial. Those are the studies that show that people who eat more fruits and vegetables, more whole grains, less animal products, less processed foods, all have better health outcomes, period, right? And just to circle back for a second, the 90% of Americans who don't eat enough vegetables, the recommendations are for 3 servings of vegetables a day, okay? 2 servings of fruit a day. So 2/3 of us are not even getting 2 pieces of fruit a day. And 90% of us aren't eating 3 vegetables a day. And most of us who are eating 1 vegetable a day, it's usually potatoes. Potatoes are wonderful, but they are not a solo act. So how should you eat? What do the guidelines show? These are 2 templates that are used very frequently. ChooseMyPlate.gov is the model based on the dietary guidelines for Americans, right? And you can see, and then this is the one on the right is the Harvard plate. And that's a very well-regarded, well-respected alternative to the Choose My Plate, right? And you can see that they're really not all that different. They both prioritize fruits and vegetables as half the plate. The Harvard plate makes it a little more vegetable heavy than fruit. Grains make up 1/4 of the plate and protein makes up the other 1/4 of the plate. And in the My Plate, there's a space for dairy. So yogurt, milk, cheese, things like that. The Harvard plate on the right, on the other hand, specifies whole grains. Okay, so things like brown rice, whole grain bread, right? Things that say on the label that they are composed of whole grains, and that should be the priority because of the fiber and because of the nutrients that it comes with. So not the refined white flour. And they kind of quantify or specify a healthy protein. So things like plant-based proteins, wild-caught fish, okay? And they make water the beverage of choice and also hold a place for healthy oils, right? So healthy oils, things like cold pressed olive oil, avocado oil, those types of healthy fats. But you can see that for the most part, there's not a whole lot of difference between these 2 guidelines. This is how the plate looks when you're eating for your health, okay? And so what does that mean? So these are cartoons. What does that actually mean? I'm glad you asked. These are just samples of possible ways to distribute or, put together a meal that follows those guidelines. And there's a lot of variability here, right? So you can see that starting on the right, you've got all these they put it in compartments, but they basically put the fruits, the vegetables, different colors, the proteins. The center, you've got an egg with some salad, maybe and there's an avocado for the healthy fat. And I believe those are just little bread nugget things. Okay. And I love the one on the far right for the pasta, because you can see that all foods do fit in this model, but you're not having a heaping plate of pasta. Instead, half the plate is the salad and the vegetables, right? And then the pasta and the meat sauce, it looks like on that, serves as the other half the plate. So you're not walking away with a little bitty portion and you're really hungry. You're walking away with a balanced plate that's there to give you the nutrients that your body requires. Here's another 3 samples, right? So you get a bonus on the pizza, because who doesn't love pizza? But you've got pizza on the left-hand side, with salad. You've got 2 slices. It looks like it's maybe a white pizza with added spinach on it. And then in the center plate, you've got more traditional pizza, and they put it with some raw vegetables and a little bit of a hummus dip, right? So that you've got the crust as the grain, you've got the vegetables in there, you've got the tomato sauce, you've got the cheese serving as both the dairy and the protein. And then on the right, there's a stir fry. That could be chicken, that could be tofu. But you can see that at least half the plate is the broccoli and the peppers, and looks like mushrooms perhaps. And then if you kind of tease it out, you can see that the tofu or the chicken chunks, whatever that might be, comprises about a quarter. And then the whole grain, which looks like it might be brown rice or some type of a seasoned quinoa, however you want to do it, it's comprising a quarter of the plate. So, I mean, just to give you some ideas about what the plate should look like. And notice also, there are a lot of different colors on that plate. When you're eating a lot of refined grains and a lot of animal products, there's a lot of brown, right? And so it's the colors in the fruits and vegetables and in the grains that are giving you those nutrients, the variety of nutrients that the body needs. Okay, so just some ideas. That's the what, right? So the bottom line is, the more plants, the better. If you can make half the plate come from plants, you're way ahead of the curve. Okay, you are now starting to nourish your body, take care of your body. It's a self-care act. And the other caveat is that food should look the way it's found in nature. All right, and so this is different iterations of a potato. You can see that the baked potato, that looks pretty close to the way it's found in nature, right? You dig it up, you scrub it up, you bake it, and its nutrient profile then is pretty intact. The French fries in the middle have been processed. They have been washed, they've been peeled, they've been sliced into little bitty strips, and they've been thrown into some boiling fat. They've lost some of their nutrients. Just the act of cutting them exposes the vitamin C content, for example, to oxygen, and it deteriorates. Okay. Looks a little less like the potato that is grown when it's harvested. And then we have potato chips, right? So that's the most processed. It's packaged in a bag, it's sliced, it's deep fat fried, it's salted. It is offering very little by way of nutrient profile compared to the baked potato. Okay. Not to say that potato chips are terrible food and you're polluting your body when you eat them. It's really a matter of deciding how you want to nourish yourself and what you're nourishing. Okay, so there are days where potato chips, they're going to hit the bill, but you're also not going to be getting the same level of nutrients that that potato or even those French fries are giving. So let's stop kidding ourselves. Okay. So the second piece of this is that the way that you eat affects how your body uses the what that you eat. You could have a picture perfect diet. You could be eating all the right things. But if you are eating them in a very stressed state, the body doesn't really know what to do with them. It's not able to get all the benefits out of them because the hormones of stress, cortisol, adrenaline, and the like, and the hormones of rest and digest, okay, those neurotransmitters, those hormones that help break down and digest and use our food, are made from the same raw materials. And so if you're eating in a stressed state, those raw materials are not available to make digestive hormones, okay? And so stress is always going to win out over rest and digest because the stress response is there to save your life. So you can't really talk yourself down right out of the gate and just say, okay, now it's time to eat, and turn off the stress response or turn off those stress hormones, okay? So when you're eating on the run, when you're eating distracted, those 20% of meals that are eaten, dashboard dining is one of the phrases that we use frequently, right? So if you're eating in front of the computer, if you're watching TV and listening to the news or something like that, you're eating in a stress state, you're not fully able to utilize those nutrients that you're putting in your body. So one way is to start to use the 3 S's, okay? Sit down, use a plate, right? Don't eat while standing, don't eat while moving. When you eat, consider it a time to begin to replenish and reconnect. Consider it a time to nourish yourself, right? So begin to shift towards the rest and digest state instead of staying in the stressed state, right? Maybe take a few deep breaths. If you've been sitting in front of the computer and you may just want to move around a little bit, do a little stretch, kind of give yourself a transitional time, and it could be just a couple seconds, to get into a state of anticipation and gratitude for the food that's coming. Take a moment to consider all the steps that it took to get this food onto your plate. Then slow down. And really, what I mean by that is chew your food. Digestion starts in the mouth. There are digestive enzymes in the saliva, and most of us eat really, really quickly. We're thinking about the next thing. We're not paying attention, right? And so as you begin to chew your food, you're beginning to break it down. There's that mechanical breaking it down. It's mixing with the digestive enzymes, and it is beginning that process, right? That's allowing you to receive the nutrients that it contains. And there's really no guide for how many times you should be chewing. Some people will see 50 times or 30 times. The bottom line is it should be a little mushy, right? Because as you swallow it and it goes to the stomach, the more thoroughly it's chewed, the more able the stomach is to do its job, right? So the stomach's going to mix in other digestive enzymes, but the stomach's not in charge of chewing. The mouth is in charge of chewing. That mechanical breaking down comes from the mouth. And so if you're not thoroughly chewing your food and putting it in the stomach then can't function, can't do its job as well, okay? Take a moment to pause and notice the smell, notice the flavor. One of the tricks of the trade that I often recommend to people is to midway through your meal, put down your utensil and take that pause. Because if you are a fast eater, this is one way to kind of slow yourself down. Halfway through, you just take a pause and you kind of check in. How full am I? Am I still hungry? Is this good? Am I enjoying this? Is it hitting the mark or is it not? Okay. Being able to take that pause allows you to reconnect with the signals that the body is constantly giving. It allows you to take care of it, to attend to it, right? And then you can decide, no, it's really good and I like it and I'm doing okay with this and I'm going to finish my plate. Or I'm getting a little full, so maybe I'm going to have a couple more bites, but you know what? I'm going to save the rest of this for another meal. And that's also part of savoring your meal. Check in. How's it taste? Do you like it? If you're eating with other people, savor the company. Are you connecting? Are you having nice conversations? Are you, using this as a time to nourish yourself emotionally and socially as well as physically, right? So take that breath and take time to connect, right? Savor everything. And if it's not working, stop. So appetite-driven hunger can be due to a lot of different non-physiological motivators, as it were. Okay. So, and these are just some of them. And it's, again, not to say that it's a wrong to eat according to appetite, but it's really helpful to take a moment and try to tease out what's actually going on, to become a little bit more mindful about what you're putting in your body and how you're putting it in your body, right? There's a reason why bakeries vent their ovens to the street. And if you're watching commercials with close-ups of food and people are laughing and, drinking, these are things that can be appetite promoting, right? So you see people enjoying food, you want to enjoy the food. Memories perhaps of being comforted by a cookie, or, my thing is ice cream. That's an itch that never gets fully scratched for me. I just, ice cream is just one of those foods that I'm always, if it's there, I will be desiring it more often than not. Okay. But, happiness that comes from happy hour and sharing stories. So it's not all about depleting emotions. It's also about emotions that make you feel happy, right? And emotions are often at the root of our food choices. And so that's not necessarily a bad thing, but if you're using food to divert your attention from emotions that are uncomfortable, right? So if you're angry and you're stuffing it with a cookie, or you're lonely and you're burying it under a plate of spaghetti, right? It sets up a whole cycle of additional negative emotions, of self-recrimination, of criticism, right? So appetite that's done without awareness and that leads to self-criticism, that's a problem. The way you manage appetite determines if it's a challenge or if it's not a challenge. And that's one of the things that we do go over in our Radical Self-Care Plan classes that we offer. What are you feeding? And are there better ways to do it, right? Because here's a secret, right? Yelling at yourself and saying, I'll do better next time. I was bad. Labeling eating behavior and foods good or bad, that's a red flag right there, right? Because we're not made for restriction. Eating due to emotional triggers is not a weakness. It is simply an inappropriate mechanism for addressing a situation. And so we can learn better mechanisms, right? But if you get into the, I'm upset, and you start to criticize and you eat something, and then it turns into the, I can't believe I did that. I'm such a loser. I do this all the time. And you start to redouble your efforts, and I'll do better tomorrow type of thing, right? Criticism has never motivated anyone to get better over the long run. It just undermines you. You take care of what you love. You don't criticize it. And so the first step in eating for self-care, or one of the steps actually, is to become aware of your self-talk. Pay attention, right? This quote by Deepak Chopra is so on point. Every cell in your body is totally aware of how you think and feel about yourself. Every cell in your body is eavesdropping on your thoughts and on your words. So what message are you sending? And is it depleting? Is it critical? Or is it nurturing and nourishing? So one of the things that we talk about is getting clear about what you're feeding. And if you find yourself in that cycle of self-criticism, start to look closer. That's your notice that something is not right, okay? And your power will always be in taking a pause, in stopping yourself. Notice what's going on. Are you tired? Maybe you need a nap. Are you bored? Maybe you need a hobby. Maybe you need to take a walk. A lot of times we confuse thirst with hunger. The body is terrible at making the distinction between thirst and hunger. So a lot of times when you want to eat, you actually need a drink of water or you need to hydrate. And that's a really good first step, particularly if you're not, if you get caught up in things and aren't real good about getting your water intake up. Is there a specific time of the day that you start to get this craving for things, right? I know a lot of people who, the minute they come home from work, when they've had a rough day or just in general because they're not really liking their jobs, they hit the cookies or they go for the sweets, and it's kind of a reward for making it through the day or an attempt to get a little sweetness in your life. So pay attention to what it is that you're feeding. Use the power of the pause. Most cravings last about 20 minutes. And so if you can just not tell yourself no, but tell yourself, I'm going to wait 20 minutes until I figure out what's going on and look a little deeper into this, right? Check in with your emotions. What are you feeling? Take a few deep breaths. Okay. Are you frustrated? Are you angry? Are you lonely? If you feed these emotions without addressing these emotions get bigger. Piling food on top of them does not give them the voice that they're and the message that they're here to give you, right? And when you get those insights, consider how you can better meet the need. So our self-care plan process has coaches that help you work through this, come up with a plan, and help guide you through the whole process. But you can certainly do it on your own, right? And come up with some ideas, not when you're in the throes of it, but when you can put a little distance between it and the action, when you can be in that pause and ask what's going on. Do I need to reach out and connect with someone if I'm eating to assuage loneliness? That type of thing. Okay. Come up with a strategy, come up with a plan. So in conclusion, your diet's not only what you eat, it's what you take in. It's what you watch, listen to, read. You will digest everything. So be very mindful of what you allow into your body, into your emotions, into your spirit. I appreciate you taking the time to spend this time with me and to be part of this virtual summit. And I look forward to hearing any feedback, any questions that you might have. I hope you do connect with us and take good care of yourself. Okay?